Okay, did you pinch your barb already?
I did not. Thank you.
Let's get the barb pinched.
Here I thought I was going to get ahead of the game by putting the hook in the vise, and I didn't. Let me see if I get that thing level. Level that up. All right. I'll start the thread base about an eye width back from the hook eye and wrap to the end of the shank while you review the recipe.
Okay, yeah, it says the recipe that we're going to do is a 3XL hook, olive marabou. We're going to use copper wire for the rib, and the body will be olive chenille, and the hackle, it calls for grizzly dyed olive, but you can use grizzly if you don't have the dyed olive, and that's the situation we're in, so we're using regular grizzly, and then we use a brown olive type thread. And that's it. So
right.
now
Let's get ready to do the.
It's time to put the tail on.
The tail, that's marabou, and the length of that tail is equal to the length of the hook shank. So we want to kind of work on our marabou and get it so it's about that length. You see, that's about the length of the shank. Maybe it's a little bit shorter right there. That's about the length of the shank.
Now the way that's done in the book is they attach that right where you've left the thread hanging above the barb.
Right.
But because of our situation.
Yeah, with getting my hands in front of the camera like this to do the function, you can't see what's going on anyway. So I'm going to move forward to make my attachment so you can see how we keep that material on top of the hook. Now we're back to our measurement. We get ready to tie that on. And I'm going to have to move my fingers in the way, sorry about that, just to make the initial attachment. Now I'm going to pull up on the fibers so that they remain on the top of the hook shank and wrap towards the bend of the hook. And that'll keep my marabou fibers on top of the hook. I'm going to trim off the waist. And let's see, get that out of there and wrap forward. I'm going to go all the way forward and bind down those waist ends and leave my thread hanging about the middle of the hook.
Okay, it's time now to put on our copper wire, and we're going to do it about the 1/2 shank position.
And I'll bend back the tag in there so that it folds back over and gets anchored in place as I wrap towards the back of the hook, and I'll position the wire so it's on the bottom of the hook. Get that all covered over there. Okay, Gretch, what comes next?
That's going to help you later on when you try to wrap that wire. The next thing we need to do is put the chenille on. And you know, when I first started tying, I found a big bump in that chenille until I learned this little trick. We're going to take that chenille off of the end down to the thread.
A lot of people do it with their thumbnail, and for years I did it myself until just a couple weeks ago we discovered that these little bulldog tweezers are really great for pulling that stuff off. Works so much better than your fingers that you can't believe it. Just takes it off in a couple of little pulls, and it seems to just do a better job. So we're going to go ahead and attach that now at the back of the hook on the bottom of the shank and wrap our thread forward.
Now we're ready to make this fly. We've got the materials on there. Of course, okay, the first thing you need to do is to wrap that chenille.
Yeah, and one of the things people often make a problem with on their chenille, and they'll end up with a blank spot at the back and don't know how they ended up with that. And that is because they start to wrap forward like that to go around the hook and not get tangled up there, and they leave a space over on that side. Now, that could be a dinger for you, and something that you want to look out for, when really all you have to do is start by keeping that chenille just at a 90-degree angle to the hook shank. Actually even kind of pull it back a little bit, and as you wrap forward, you're not going to leave any gaps on the other side of the hook that you hadn't planned on doing. Now there's one. It's not quite as tight as I'd like it, so I'll pull that back and do it over.
Yeah, each wrap needs to be right against the previous one.
Yeah, that's really important, because what you're actually doing is placing each wrap not the chenille right up against the previous chenille, but the core of the chenille up against the previous core so that you're getting a good tight chenille body. It's really snugging up that.
Now we need to take a couple of holding wraps on that chenille.
I need to do one more. I'm going to just take one turn on that to hold it for a second. Just like that. We're going to take that off here in a little bit. And now, remember how we exposed the thread core? Well, we're going to do it again. I'm going to set that aside, and we'll bring our bullnose tweezers in here and expose that. And now I'm going to grab that with a pair of hackle pliers and unwrap that holding thread and take one more turn of chenille so that I'm only tying down the bare thread. And we'll trim that waist. We'll remove some of the fibers at the base of this hackle. I'm just going to go ahead and tie it on right there in the front of the body.
With the concave going back.
Yeah, I explained that. Well, I'm going to pull this stem back and anchor it also behind the feather so that the feather doesn't pull out when I start to wrap it, and then I'll trim off the waist. Now I'm going to wrap a turn right there in the front and then start palmering the hackle as I work my way to the back of the fly, trying to place consistently even turns of the hackle as I go back on the body towards the tail. Now we're going to get back there right at the tail, and I'm ready to tie that off, and I need to do that with 2 turns of the copper wire. So there's the first one. Let's do a second one. And now I'm going to work my way forward, wiggling the wire as I go, working it in there and binding down the stem of that hackle as I work my way forward. This really makes for a bulletproof fly by wrapping that hackle stem down. And we're going to get up here to the front, tie that off with a couple of turns of thread. I'm going to pull this back and bind it down as well. Trim off the waist. And let me get my hackle pliers up here like I've done before, otherwise I'll never find that wire on the desk. And I'll go ahead and trim off the excess part of the feather at the back and do a whip finish using my whip finish tool. I'll just place that in there with several turns. Trim that off.
You're ready to put some cement on it and call it a done fly.
Yeah. Let me grab the cement here. And I like to turn my fly up so that I don't get the eye filled with cement. So, and that works. Or you can just hold it in your fingers and accomplish the same thing.
Okay, let's evaluate this fly.
All right, good. What happens first, Gretch?
Overall appearance and proportions.
I'd say that that's pretty much dead on. It looks good to me anyway.
Looks good to me too. Hackle looks about right.
Yep.
Consistency, so we only have one fly again, so we don't need to worry about that. How about our material selection?
Material selection looks good. Let me move the camera just a little bit here, and we'll make sure that the tail is in sync with everything. Material selection is right on. We did have to substitute regular grizzly for dyed grizzly, but that's well within the parameters I outlined in the book.
Okay. The tail looks like it's about the length of the shank.
Yeah, and it is, so there's no demerits at this point.
And the bottom looks like it's even, and if we look at the back side, it should look as good as the front side. That's one thing to be sure and check, is check the back side of your fly.
Okay.
And hackle.
Hackle is well spaced, and it's about the right length.
The ribbing.
The ribbing is evenly spaced as well, anchoring everything in place. started out with 2 turns at the back, working our way forward.
Be sure you do those 2 turns. That's something that I had to remind myself of. And the head.
And the head is about the same size, if you will, as the span of the eye of the hook. So that looks good. And I think we've tied a perfect fly for a change.
Good job.